Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everybody. So glad you could join. I'm really happy to have this wonderful group of ladies joining us, and I'm very happy to have all of you attending. So to get started, can I have the panelists just introduce themselves? You know, the normal, what were you doing before you came to Learn? When did you attend Learn? And then what are you doing now? I'll copy that question to the chat because I know it's hard when someone asks you a three-part question to remember all of the parts. Maybe we can just popcorn and I'll start with Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel. Before attending Learn Academy, I was in retail. I was a retail manager at Vans, which is a very cool company. It's very California and young, but I feel like the novelty of that company wears off and then you kind of realize that you're in retail. And there's only so much that you can do in a retail career. So I really wanted something that would challenge me and allow me to kind of go further and know that I could maybe retire someday or buy a house eventually, something that I just did not think I was going to be able to accomplish. So I was turned on to Learn Academy by a cousin who went through a boot camp as well. And she had great success doing that. So I'm super happy I went to Learn. I graduated Charlie class of 2019, so summer of 2019. So I've been out, how long is that? I don't know, a year and some change. And so now I'm a support engineer at a company called Circle CI, and Learn is still the best choice I ever made. CJ.
Hello, my name is CJ or Caitlin, whatever works for you. What was I doing before Learn? I was doing quite a lot of things, but the last thing that I was doing before joining the program was as a healthcare management consultant. And it basically consisted of traveling around the country Monday through Thursday every week. And I got tired of it. We were just making presentations. I was reiterating the presentation in front of people, pretending that they couldn't read the presentation. And it was just it was awful. So I decided to go to Learn Academy, Delta 2018. So we graduated from the program in October and November of that year. And I started out at Cito. It's a startup company in downtown San Diego. And that was my internship. And they wanted me to be on the data team. And that was part of their internship program was to put all of the interns on the data team for the first month or two, maybe 3, just so that they can understand the data of the company. And then from there, they graduate them to whatever team or department they want to be on. And I went to Learn to, be a full stack developer or front end because I love design. I love, making things look pretty. But I actually love the back end. And this is as far away from the front end as possible. I loved it so much, so I just stayed on as a data engineer. And fast forward a couple of years, I am now a data engineer at Park Mobile. It's a company that they create an app and you just use it to do contactless parking. So that's what I'm doing now. I'll pass it on to, excuse me, Lela.
Yes. Sweet. Hey guys, glad to be here. Let's see, before Learn, I was working in the finance department of a large hospital network. Nothing too exciting. Chose to do a deep dive into the tech industry in 2018. I moved out to San Diego to be part of the Echo 2018 cohort right after CJ. Had a little overlap there. I was able to extend the internship that I got into a contract position for a few months, which was great, but I had assurances that that would never be full-time. So I was still job searching for a long while there. I ended up getting the job I have now at Arista MD. which is a healthcare tech company. And I've been there for about 2 years now. I'm delighted to be working in the healthcare tech industry, tending to our software that allows patients to have just easier, faster, more impactful access to specialist care. For me, that's important. I gotta have something I'm connected to, that can get me through the day and get me through the bugs and all that, So knowing I'm part of transforming that access, and especially during the pandemic, as things have turned a lot more digital in the healthcare world, it's been really awesome. So excited to be there.
All right, let's send it over to Yeem.
Hi, everybody. Let's see the questions. My name is Yeem, and before Learn, I was working at a server at just in restaurants, I've actually knew that I wanted to be at Learn like in 2018, but it just took me like a really long time to figure things out, study beforehand, get my ducks in a row, and so I actually ended up attending Learn in 2020 Delta. So I started on my birthday, August 31st of last year, and I graduated this year, January 15th. And what am I doing now? Now I am currently working as a software validation engineer at Notch 8, which is a Learn Academy sister company, really cool. And it was really interesting, really cool actually. My internship that I had through Learn was at Advisor, and we ended up doing a lot of like QA work, which is really cool. And honestly, that has helped me out so much immensely, because that really set me up for my current role at Notch 8. So yeah, I feel super grateful and really blessed that I was given this opportunity. Next, let's see. Did you want to speak?
Actually,
yeah, okay.
we actually went
Okay.
through our cycle of our 4 here. Great, thank you so much for the intros. I'll just ask you one more question, and then I'll open it up to the floor for any other questions that any of our guests have. But I am curious, what is it about you that makes you good at your current job? I'll put CJ on the spot to start off with.
That's a hard one. What about me that makes me good at my job? Oh gosh. Let's see. I think I think the thing, and this actually just happened today too, is that I'm pretty humble. I say it as it is when it comes to like the mistakes that I make. And it helps other people learn too, right? Like it's not necessarily the only thing that makes me good at being a data engineer, but it is partly how I keep having the jobs that I have and keep, keep doing what I'm doing. And, it's being humble and being transparent is pretty important as a developer, because there's a lot of problems that people don't know about, and I get imposter syndrome. I assume I'm the worst. I know nothing about anything and whatnot, and I assume that everyone else knows everything. It's weird, but so in reality, it's not that. It's like everyone is doing this the first time, etc. And when I make a mistake and I tell my boss and my team on the team Slack, like, I messed up, I duplicated data, which happened today, and I know how to fix this and whatnot. And people learn. They're like, oh, okay, like, I didn't know you would duplicate data if you did it this way. And they see it as like a mentoring process, because on my data engineering team, I have the highest title, so I'm supposed to be a mentor through that. And, I just learned that, being humble and being transparent about that helps me get to where I am today. And then, there's, the data analysis part and stuff like that, which I feel like a lot of people can get good at, but it takes a lot to be a humble and transparent person. So that's what I'm going with for that.
I love it. I think you're very humble, CJ, but I also think you're a brilliant human being. So it's reassuring to hear that we all have imposter syndrome. Rachel, you can go next.
Let's see. What about me makes me good at my job? That was the question. So my job as a support engineer is a little different than like other engineering roles. I don't actually like really code that much. It's more like the software isn't working and it's your fault. Why isn't your software working? Help me fix my thing. And we get that sort of these messages all day from customers. It's pretty interesting. It's very like customer facing, which is kind of a fun parallel to having a retail career before going to learn and like learning to code, which is kind of funny because I'm still definitely doing like the customer service thing. So I feel like my compassion and my empathy is like huge in that, where I know we're behind a screen and it's all through text, but being able to read a message from someone and understand like the underlying tone of that message and how urgent it is for them, for their day, for me to help them fix their problem, I think is really important. And for me, being able to like take all of these problems that people are having and be able to triage them and say that this one's a higher priority than the next one, maybe because they're freaking out right now, has been really helpful, because it can be tough to kind of understand how things should be prioritized. And then other than that, probably my ability to see patterns in things and notice, patterns and things that are coming through, so that I can identify when maybe it is something wrong with our product and isn't something that they're doing wrong, which allows me to kind of like elevate things to different parties and different teams. And so in general, it just like helps me be successful in my job. So probably those two things. Yeah. Yeem.
As for me, I would say that something that is a strength for me is my communication skill. I think that's often been said to me as well when I was in the boot camp, that I was really communicative, speaking to the instructors, asking questions, and speaking to my partners really well. I think that's been really helpful to me in my current role as a software validation engineer, because my role is literally to be like Wreck-It Ralph, just going through the developer's code and seeing what's working, what's not. And I've been here for a month, only a month, but I have really learned the importance of like good documentation, speaking to the developer and seeing what is already a known issue, what's being worked on. And I really agree with Rachel as well, that having empathy and having that experience in a previous customer service role is just so important. Like I do have meetings with clients, but I currently am working with the developers more at this moment. But I think it is really important to be able to speak with them, because, the last thing they want to hear really is that something they made didn't work, So I think it's really important to be able to make the issue really clear, but also be empathetic in a way of saying like, oh, this is like low priority right now. I know you're working on other things. And so I agree that empathy is really important, but I also think that communication is really important as well, especially in a remote field or where we're working right now.
Lela.
Well, you guys are making some great points. Definitely everything that's been said. I think I would also focus in on the empathy component. So I'm a software engineer, and we take ownership for this humongous piece of software that exists and is very complex, and a lot of different people touch it, and a lot of different types of people touch it. So we have on our own staff a team of nurses that work to process some of the consults and pull them out of EHRs and things like that and get them into our system. So we have to consider them and their their perspective when it comes to, you know, what it is that they're actually doing with our software. And we have like providers that use it, we have specialists that use it, and then we have our own internal team, like our client services department needs to use certain configuration pages that we put together. So being able to take a step back from any given ticket that shows up on our to-do list and to say like, well, who actually, you know, who said that? Who said it's not working? Like, who wants it differently? And other things too that might just not be so intuitive, you know, oh, if you know, they got a consult of one variety and then the same patient shows up with a different e-consult within a few days. I mean, is it a duplicate? Is that something we flag, or does it make sense that those would just be two separate entities? So definitely taking the perspective of who's going to be using what we're building and who's hurt by the bug in question or whatever's going on with it. And it's not something I actually see that much in the rest of my team, which is interesting. Some, you know, they'll say, well, just ask product. What does product think? And, you know, it sort of feels like, well, what do you think? You know, and how would you feel if you were in that spot? And I think that really helps to drive a high quality product that's not going to just come back as another bug in a couple months.
I really love that a lot of the things that you guys said is all like communication and like empathy and passion about and connecting with other humans, which I think is absolutely part of it's what we do in technology, but it's not something that you think of immediately when you think of a typical developer role. So I love that. Great. Well, I would love to open the floor to questions. I have many more questions I'm happy to ask if nobody has one off the top of their head, but I would love to open it up to any questions from our guests.
So you're welcome to unmute or just throw them in the chat.
Hi, my name's Enrique. I'm interested in the next cohort, and they told me that CJ is based in Mexico. So I was wondering how that happened, and is there a specific path you had to take that's different from most alumni? And yeah, I'm just a little nervous about possibly living in Mexico and not landing as good a job if I was in San Diego or something. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. It is having remote jobs definitely, it's booming right now, right? Because of the pandemic. And a lot of companies are starting to figure out what this actually means for them. Like, could they, let me close this window. Like, is it legal to do it? Is it like, you know, some companies have sensitive data like healthcare data that probably can't really cross boundaries, even if it's digital. There's like different ways to interpret that and whatnot. So actually what I did was, my first job was not remote. And I'll get back to this. My first job was not remote, but being a data engineer is one of the higher demanding roles, or one of the roles in highest demands out there right now. And this is a result because everyone was hiring data scientists. They were like, oh, this is the hype. We need to know what the data looks like and what kind of decisions we can make off of the data. But then they realized that they actually need to clean up the data. They need to get the data first. And, you know, it's like garbage in, garbage out, right? Data scientists won't tell you useful things if the data is garbage. So a lot of companies started hiring data engineers. And it's honestly pure luck that I ended up in this role. I just had a knack for data, and data engineering in 2018 was still a title that people weren't really sure what it meant and people are still figuring out. So it's still relatively new. And I think, just having that 1 year of data engineering under my belt in some of the more well-known platforms like AWS, platforms in the cloud, really helped me leverage my skill set and say, I want to be remote. Like, how can we make this work? So my second job was actually a contracting role with a healthcare company in the US. And I was like, okay, well, I know you're a healthcare company and I'm going to be a contractor. Is it actually truly legal for me to work remotely? And their legal department, they said, yes, you can do that. Because technically the responsibility is on me as a contractor. And so that's actually how I ended up in Mexico. Moved to Mexico City. I kept my LinkedIn profile in the US so that when I get emails from recruiters, they think I'm in the US. And it's just, it skips the whole, like, are you sponsored? Like, do we need to sponsor you as a, US citizen to work for us or something like that? It skips all of that. So I just keep my profile in the US. And, this third job, which is the current one I have, they were like, hey, I see you're based in Atlanta. This job is 100% remote. And we just need to, make sure that you're, eligible to work for us because we can't sponsor you. We don't have the money. And I was like, yes, I am. But what do you mean 100% remote? Because when people say that, sometimes they say 100% remote, apostrophe, like in the US only, like asterisk, sorry, in the US only, or 100% remote in your home, your specific address only. Because some companies are really strict about that. They're like, you have to be at your specific address. You may be remote, but you have to, I know it's weird, but there are companies that do that. So I just keep asking questions like, what do you mean 100% remote and whatnot? And it was actually pretty easy. This was probably the easiest negotiation I had to do as it relates to working remotely. But at that point I had, 2.5 years of experience. So I had a lot of skill sets to leverage for that. So that's how I got to be a remote employee. As it relates to like finding jobs, I mean, job searches are virtual. Being physically in Mexico has not hurt me at all as it relates to finding a new job or anything like that. I get paid in US dollars, so they don't do any conversion. There's no uncertainty as it relates to the conversion rate or anything like that. So yeah, it's definitely something that I would, be mindful of as you look for jobs. It's like, what do they mean by remote? And I would, I don't regret it. It's been nice, that's for sure. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
On the topic of remote work, though, I mean, Rachel, I don't know where your company is based, but I know you did move to a different state. So, like, how were you able to navigate that?
That was a personal choice that I decided to change my permanent address to my boyfriend's parents' address, so that I could just move wherever I wanted. I don't know how legit that is, but that's what I did. I don't think they would be mad if they found out, but with my company specifically, depending on where you move, your income can change. So you're free to move wherever you want. But if I moved to some little tiny town in Michigan or something, my pay would go way down. But moving just based on cost of living. But since I was moving from San Diego to Portland, they're both considered high cost of living. So my wages wouldn't change because it's kind of in a tiered structure like that, where it's high cost of living, mid and low. And that's where your income is based off of. So changing my address, my permanent mailing address was honestly more because I'm not going to be in this apartment forever. And so I want to be able to like move and get a new place. And that's just my primary address, and don't worry about it because I knew my income wasn't going to change. So that was kind of my strategy. But my company's like pretty cool about being open and flexible with the employees. Like they definitely put employees first. And so my manager basically said, it's up to you how you want to handle it. Like change it to this if you want, it'll be fine. So yeah, it's pretty flexible. Just depends on the company you go to. Just like CJ was saying, like companies for sure can be really strict about that sort of thing. So it really just depends on where you go.
Lela, were you working in a building, or were you remote prior to the pandemic?
I was in a building, a work building. And yeah, it was an interesting transition. I think I called it before them because we had a pretty flexible like work from home whenever you want. I was like, this is crazy. Like, why am I sitting in traffic and risking my life? It doesn't make any sense. I don't think I'm ever going to go back to working like at a physical location. I might go for a meeting here and there, but the rest of my team also is remote. There's one guy who lives in New York, like Rochester, New York, and the rest of my team is based in Costa Rica. So that's was the point. My whole team is on screens no matter where I am.
Interesting, very cool. Do anyone else have questions?
Hi, Devin, current learn student, Alpha 2021. Question on, so we're kind of approaching our, like the end of our like learning session and heading towards internships, and everything's getting real when it comes to our resumes and our portfolio. What projects did all of you embrace towards the end? Like what became your, like from the class, what projects became like your, like the ones that you wanted to show off? Or was it ones from the class, or did you happen to do some on the side that you found on the internet? And if you found some side ones, drop some links over here maybe.
I feel like I'll go first. Sorry. I feel like for me, I was kind of in a tough place because I felt like, especially before internship, the biggest thing that you have is like your capstone, which is definitely, yes, put that on your resume. Like put your capstone on your resume, know it front and back, like be able to explain what it does, the inner workings and things like that. Like that is definitely one. Think about things that you would add to it later. Like, don't let it just be like, and now we're done. Think about what you would continue to do if you had more time. Like, think about the things that employers are going to want to know. And with the capstone, that's a really great opportunity to show like it's something that you're passionate about and something that you want to continue improving upon and iterating upon. So that's a good one. I would also say, at least my personal strategy, not to have like a million different projects. I think 4 quarters are better than 100 pennies, where if you have these solid projects that you're like proud of and you know them front to back and you've worked really hard on them, that's better than having like a million little things that you did on the side. Unless that's like your deal and you like to make little things over the weekend and you want to show them off, then the passion behind that is what you can be excited about, and that can be fine too. But in general, I would say maybe a little bit less projects that you've put genuine work into. But the big thing for me was that getting like your first job out of boot camp, like the reality is you probably don't have like the most amazing apps built yet because you just don't have the experience yet. And that's totally okay. So don't focus too much of your resume on the projects because they're just not going to be as valuable as all the rest of it. All the communication, all of your ability to interact with people, all of the reasons why people would want to work with you are not going to be from your tech skills. They know that it's because you still need to learn and they're hiring you because they're willing to teach you. So that's my advice.
I'm piggybacking on what Rachel was saying. I definitely think that, yeah, not trying to have like immaculate projects out there. We did it's been a while, but we did a couple little like games, like there was a tic-tac-toe game and some other little, I don't know, fairly simple little games like that that we built in the class. And so something that I did on my personal site was made like an arcade section, and I put all those in there and added little features and things, styled them up a little better, and then just followed a few more tutorials for a few more to like round out the page. So I had like 6 maybe, just little games on like an arcade section. And it was an interesting challenge too, because like mounting those like little React components within components on like one page and getting them to not get muddled up with each other was a good challenge. And then just like pimping out my personal page as much as I could. Like every link was, every button was awesome, like had these hover effects and like pictures were sliding in. Like I just like poured hours into that. And I figured that was the place to put my time and effort, was to just, because they're definitely going to go on there. So they're going to go on there, make it cool.
Yeah, for me, it was, talking about the capstone project, but also, like Rachel said, take it to the next level if you can. Look at the newest trends of stuff out there. Like, what is it that's popular now? Tailwind CSS or something like that. Like, try to incorporate that into your project and say, like, I made a mobile friendly website that, looks fantastic on a desktop or something like that. But I definitely agree that, fewer high quality projects is better than a bunch of little things. And as it relates to, I'm just gonna go into the internship aspect as well. But when you're doing your internship, do not feel guilty or selfish that you're trying to, put an accomplishment to something that you're doing. Like everything that you're doing at your internship, it is a learning experience. And whenever you're doing something like, I don't know, maybe adding more unit tests, that's an accomplishment as well. And that should go on your resume, even though, a lot of people put that, on the back burner or something like that, and try to put a number to it. Say like, I enhanced the unit testing suite by 200%. That sounds awesome. Like, you're hired if I saw that. So, don't feel like the stuff that you're doing just because you're an intern and it's an internship doesn't mean that it's worth less. It's valuable learning experience. Everyone starts somewhere and absolutely should go on your resume. And I also built a personal website as well. That one I used for a lot of like guinea pig, I don't know, concepts, trying to learn how to do a Python website instead of a React. I don't recommend it actually. Stick with React. But it's stuff like that. You can use your personal website to like experiment with the stuff, and that's also valuable to put on your resume as well. So, yep.
I think CJ made some really good points. So I guess I want to piggyback off what she said. I 200% agree that when you go into your internship, like it's definitely an educational experience. You are doing it to be there to learn, So when you're there, like, please don't be afraid to be selfish, and not only, track your accomplishments and have like metrics you could put on your resume, but also don't be afraid to ask questions, like they know you're an intern, they know you're learning. And I feel like the interns who learn to ask questions sooner, I know everybody has imposter syndrome, but I just want you to know that when you're there, you're expected to be learning and getting an education from that. So don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it, you know, like really make that time worthwhile for you. And then I was kind of in a weird like limbo because I was hired pretty soon after my my graduation date, so I didn't get to really work on projects. But one thing that I've heard that a lot of my like cohort mates are doing is like they do go back and redo their old projects, and you know, people talk about getting like, you know, little green squares on GitHub. If that's really important for you, one good strategy is just going through tutorials, because when you go through tutorial, you are creating things, you are pushing things up, and you can always, you know, make that little app your own, you know, adding your own little flavor. So that's always really helpful too.
Yeah, great. For you guys, when you are going through the cohort, what's a interesting takeaway that you could share with some of us who are either in the cohort now or maybe thinking about joining? Just open general advice. Yeem, give us some advice.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. I guess I especially wanted to speak because I am one of the students that actually went through the program remotely. But since I was like interested in the program since 2018, I had some opportunities to be in the physical classroom as well. And so when, you know, when COVID hit, I was really concerned. I was like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna do everything remotely? But honestly, like I liked remote work a lot through Learn. Like when you're in a classroom, it's really cool, everybody's there. But honestly, when you are going through the program remotely, I feel like the lecture can be so much more clear because, you know, the instructor is sharing their screen, their code. You can take all the screenshots you want, you know, whereas like in a physical classroom, you're like, you know, bending your neck over, not quite sure what the instructor is saying, you know. So that was really cool. And one thing as well that I did like working, what I liked about working remotely or learning remotely is that it was super, super easy to ping the instructors, like flag them down in Slack, you know, like, oh, we need some help, you know, and the instructors would just say like, oh yeah, just give us a moment, you know, or I'm with this other group right now, give me a moment. But like in a physical classroom, it's kind of harder to gauge that as an instructor because, you know, you have to physically be over there with that pair. And I feel like sometimes some people might not feel like they're getting the help they need. But with remote work and with Slack, you know, up and coming and everything, it's very easy to ask your questions and know when you'll be helped. So I like that a lot. And also I was, sorry, long answer. I was also really concerned about like, you know, being remote and not really being able to connect with everybody. But I honestly feel like I made so many friends and Learn remotely. It was pretty great. Like I walked out of the program with more friends than, you know, than I had before. So that was really cool. And Learn does a really good job of having like, you know, icebreaker questions and activities. But beyond that, if you do join the program, I really do implore you to, you know, take the first step, be courageous, brave, and, you know, try to make personal connections because they really do last your lifetime.
Who else is gonna sprinkle some wisdom on us?
All right, so when you're going through the bootcamp experience, it can be pretty intimidating because you might have people coming in with some experience, whether it's relating to knowing how to do HTML from the MySpace days, or you know, just doing some sort of like mathematical programming from a mandatory class in university. Like there's going to be a wide range of experiences, and it can be pretty intimidating because when you're sitting there in class and people are just like popping off answers to questions, you're probably thinking, oh goodness, like they're getting it so faster than me. Like, and then it just like starts to build up and you start feeling bad and you're just like, I don't think I'm meant for this, or, you know, those thoughts start happening, and it happens to everyone in the program. It definitely do it at your own pace. The part that I had the hardest time understanding was SQL. Like, I'm not kidding you, SQL. I was just like, I am so done with this database crap. I don't know why we're learning this or whatever. And now this is my job. So everyone learns at a different pace. Everyone picks things up in a different way or sees it differently. And maybe just because you don't understand it at first doesn't necessarily mean you won't ever get it. Maybe it just hasn't been explained to you in a way that you best understand it. And it's not the fault of instructors either. Like, there's so many different learning styles out there. There's so many different perspectives and approaches. It's, you understanding how you best learn and then adapting that to your learning experience. I think that is probably the one advice that I could, provide to people who are either in the program or thinking of doing it. It's intimidating no matter what. And just, take it easy, relax at the end of the day, say, okay, what did I not get? And I'm gonna put this on the to-do list and revisit this in a week. Don't try to figure it out that night. Revisit it a week or something like that and see if it clicks or something. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I think in kind of that same vein of like being easier on yourself and trying not to compare yourself to people who you think are learning faster than you is to be okay with not knowing everything, because you won't. And it's actually like so much more practical like advice than I ever like really thought it would be. And I'll explain myself. Being okay with not knowing everything doesn't mean like not to challenge yourself. Like, try to understand the fundamentals, try to understand the core concepts, try your best to remember the syntax, or at least remember how you Googled it to figure out that syntax, but challenge yourself in that regard. But don't beat yourself up if it just doesn't quite make sense yet. And the reason why I think it's so practical is because working as a support engineer, and I'm not directly coding the software. For me, I get tickets from people all over the world who are using my company's software with problems. And we're a CI/CD company, so we're part of the like deployment process. And so it's very important that our stuff works, but that means that pretty much anyone can use our product. So that means that people are writing in a million different languages with a million different tools, and you just have to kind of like figure out what it is that they're trying to do. That doesn't mean I have to learn a million different languages. It just means that literally week 1 of JavaScript, knowing what a function looks like, knowing what a variable looks like, like very basic fundamentals are what I use constantly, because it's like, oh, well, between all of these languages, these things are common. So I'm able to kind of get to the bottom of it. And I don't have to remember the syntax of how to set up a perfect like React app, but I do know these fundamental skills that help me get through my day. So not beating yourself up about knowing every single little thing is super important. Like, I know I'm giving a really specific case where, I'm talking about my specific experience, but that's going to be the case wherever you go, because you're going to go to a company that might be a totally different stack than what Learn teaches. And that's fine, because if you know the fundamentals, you'll learn that new language, you'll learn that new tool way quicker. So, yeah.
Yeah, very much along those same lines. I started looking at job postings like week 3 or something, and I was like, oh man, there's like a lot of languages out there. There's a lot of frameworks. Oh boy, like, let me just try and get, 6. And that was so dumb and just unreachable. And it shouldn't be. I mean, if they're going to look at your resume and see like, okay, well, you did a 4-month program, then to see like, oh, you're proficient in 4 different JavaScript frameworks, that doesn't make any sense. So, like, well, this is a liar. Like, and yeah, the other part of it is that you just get a surface, if you're trying to go too fast and too much all at once, you get this surface level understanding, and yeah, you'll come back around to this project in a month or two and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's how you do an arrow function or something. And just, if you have those like deeply understood fundamental concepts, just like Rachel was saying, and you can explain them and stand by them and be able to say, oh, it's tic-tac-toe, but here's exactly how it works, and I'm really comfortable with every step of the algorithm that decides a winner. That's gonna be more impressive at the junior level than just having, oh, I know React and Vue and Angular, and you just probably don't. So it's being light on yourself to just know what you know and know it well.
Love it. Any other questions from our guests?
I'd like to ask Devin, who's in the current one, right? How he's doing with the remote, because I heard already from Yeem, I think it was, but I would like to get a second look into it, because it's definitely different, even though you still make the bonds and friends and the networking, and you still have a lot of resources to learn. What are the pros and cons, or how has your experience been?
Well, I guess it's been great. Honestly, I had reservations about it, not gonna lie, before I did it. I've got a couple of friends that have gone through the program, and they went through when it was in person, but I've heard nothing but great things. And the Learn itself, I believe, I could be wrong, and I'd like any of the panel members here probably speak to it way better. Actually, I think Yeem was, yeah, you said you talked to Yeem, because she was in the cohort before me, but they definitely pivoted really quickly and very effectively into remote work, and they learned from a great company too as well. Like, there's a company that does a lot of remote work, and they kind of modeled it. I could be wrong from what I heard. From my understanding, they kind of modeled their approach after that, and every day feels really fluid. And honestly, like, once you get in the routine, there's no commute. They give you a laptop to use, and it's got all the stuff you need on it. So if there's ever an issue with your computer, they know exactly how to fix it, because they've set it up for you and everything. So it's like we're there. And there's a lot of features in Zoom that help with that, and Slack, and a lot of the technologies that we use. Yeah, and yeah, it's great. So sorry, I didn't mean to butt in, but it's awesome.
Thank you.
I have a question, if that's okay. I was wondering, like, for all of you, how does like testing play into your day to day? And I apologize for coming late. Maybe this was answered already. But how does how do you incorporate testing into, working and building on projects? And how much of a focus is that on the work that you're doing?
I could say that we have taken like 2021, one of our big goals is to improve our testing. We have a QA team, and within that, and even smaller, one person automation team. And so that covers pretty much the happy path for, I think, our entire app at this point. So just, expected behavior from users. But in terms of like unit tests that we would write, It's something that we are just starting to do. The last couple of months, we've been doing like a firm approach on TDD where we just, well, I guess a modified TDD where we write all of the tests first, but then we comment them out and then we make the app work so we don't have to look at failing tests for like 2 weeks. It's just depressing. And then we comment the test back in sort of as we're figuring it out. And then at the end, bring them all back and let that go. But it's definitely something that's important, and it just makes all our lives easier. I mean, nobody likes to write tests at my company anyway. There's probably people out there, but not us. And so it is gratifying because then in the long run you see where it like pays off. And you're like, wow, I never would have caught that. And it also gives you a better perspective on like what exactly you want the new feature to accomplish. Because if you say like, when a user presses the button, it turns red, then, I mean, you know that when the user presses the button, it should turn red, and you have a pretty clear understanding of what needs to happen. And it gets a lot more complicated than that, of course. And so, yeah, it's very helpful, I would say.
For me, it was basically non-existent when I joined my current company. And I say that as, you know, a developer at a company that has an app used by lots and lots of people. It was non-existent on my team. But I joined the team, and I was used to writing tests from my previous job. It was like, you know, it saved me in a lot of scenarios where, you know, if I'm testing for something, or if I'm writing the code and I'm looking for something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's passing. Because I could be getting something else that I wasn't expecting, but just never looked for, or something like it's definitely saved me in a lot of cases, especially when I'm looking at data. It's like, you know, if I'm comparing data, the amount of data between two sources, I'm going to check and see if the data is equal. Like, I'm trying to move data from one database to another database. Okay, so are the numbers equal between the two? Like, there's 500 records in this database and 500 records in this other database. I'm just going to look for count in one is equal to count in the other, right? But then you go through the test and you're like, wait a second, I want to know when the count is 0 for both, because that would mean that there's something really wrong. But it's not necessarily something that you think about when you're doing the actual development. So in those cases, unit test has helped me a lot. And as it relates to how involved it is in my current role, the way we deploy code is by creating our own repository. And since we're owners of repositories, we can set rules for how it will pass in order to get promoted into a live environment. And for me, I was like, I'm going to set the standard, say 80% code coverage. That is the best practice. At least it seems to be the most agreed upon best practice is at least 80%. I just did 80% because we're going from 0 to that. And it's helped me a lot because, you know, if something fails in production, which does happen, then I can say, well, look, I tested for all of these things, but, you know, is this one tiny edge case that nobody thought of? And it, you know, it saves your ass a lot of time. So that's my perspective on unit test, and I find it fun. You know, I like having a break every now and then from, you know, coding for 3 straight days and then just 1 day of unit test. It's a little relaxing. It's like, okay, you know, I'm expecting this. I know how my code works and stuff like that. So I like writing unit test every now and then. It gives me a little bit of a mental break. So, yeah.
Yeem, tell us about those tests.
Hi, hey Rudy. So I mentioned earlier before you here that I'm actually a software validation engineer at Notch 8. And this is actually, I'm the first in that role. Like they just made that role. So to answer your question, yeah, at Notch 8, they've had QA, they have QA interns, they have spec tests and such, but they have realized that, if they had better test coverage, if they had automated testing, it would have saved them so many times, like from getting bit in the butt. So because of that, this new role has been created, for me to fill. And so Notch 8 probably has like over like 20 clients at once, and for them to be able to catch the bugs beforehand, like through testing, would just save them so much time and so much money. So that's something that they've determined to be really helpful, and that has developed this role for me. I've only been here for a month, so I can't say much more than that just because I haven't been able to do as much. I'm still like learning the ropes and stuff. But I would definitely say that, yes, they have determined that testing is so important that they have created this role for me. So.
I don't personally write any tests in my role, but I spend a lot of time debugging other people's tests and figuring out why they don't pass in Circle CI. So for me, like having experience with it at Learn, kind of like dipping my toe into it and then going to my first internship where that whole internship I was writing tests was really helpful with my current position, which is actually kind of funny because at my first internship, I was writing tests that wouldn't pass in Circle CI. And now I'm on the other side of that, which is super funny. It's very cool to be on both sides of that.
That was awesome. Love it. Any other questions?
Yes. So I wanted to ask, so I know it's a fear that I got. I feel like I'm gonna, if get to the internship and then look at like code that's already been, built, because I feel like once you learn, you're always starting a new project or something, or working on a project you've built already, so you're familiar with it. So what does it feel like, and how did you deal with starting on the internship or a job and you're like looking at code that's already been established, you kind of have to learn it? Like, do you get time to learn it? Like, how does that process go?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a lot of jobs where you're going in and the code is already done, unless you're working for a startup, right? And you're doing the code from scratch for them. If you make it to that point, kudos, that's hard work. But yeah, for the majority of the other jobs, it's you're working with code that's already there. And it's overwhelming. It's like you're sitting there on your first day and you're looking at this massive script of JavaScript, for example, and it's like, I have no idea how this interacts with everything else in the system. I have no idea what this script does. Like, I don't know where to start. Generally, what I do is I just break it down piece by piece. Like, look at the functions, the smaller functions, and see what they're doing. And then, go through the script, in chronological order and say, okay, what is this line doing here? And I would actually copy that script and put it into my own IDE or text editor and add comments to it as I go through it. Like, okay, line 5 is a function that is in file something else. What is that function doing? And I would write a 1-line code saying, this is what this function is doing. Okay, next line, and so on, and so on. And then when you read through the comments, you can pull the story together. Like, this script does this, etc. And then there's some things like coding formats or something that may be unique to a company that you wouldn't necessarily see elsewhere, like how they name things, their naming conventions, where they put their code. And that is okay to ask questions about, like, do you have any documentation on standards that you have within the company on how you name things? What are your standards for even like where to put the files and stuff like that? Most of the time in my case, documentation is pretty poor. So I just ask the developers, don't be afraid to do that, just get some 30-minute screen time with them, share your screen and say, this is how I'm interpreting what this code does. Is this correct? And, they'll provide you with feedback from there. But it's definitely intimidating at first. It's sometimes a little bit overwhelming, but don't take it as, don't take it personally. You can go into a company and some developers who are amazing at what they're doing, they don't know how to document or comment. And it would be difficult for anybody, regardless of experience, to onboard with that code. So if it's difficult to understand, don't take it personally. Just, take a deep breath, go line by line, and then, just start asking questions about your interpretation of the code.
I would add too, like those are awesome points. And I think a big part of the process for kind of taking on this behemoth of this giant code base that you've never seen before is your onboarding process and knowing, okay, this code is this big, but my job is this big. So let's not think about this, let's think about this. And what is the onboarding process to get that down? And that's where you can take the interview process and flip it on its head, where you're now interviewing that company. Sure, you're trying to figure out if you're a good fit for them and maybe if they're a good fit for you. So asking them, what does your onboarding process look like? How long is it? How long do you anticipate I'll be in this training phase before I'm up to speed? Like, how long will it be before I can kind of jump off and really feel comfortable? And some companies might be like, we're just going to throw you in the deep end. And maybe that's how you thrive and that works for you. That's not how I thrive. So it was really important for me to find a company that was like, oh, probably about 6 months. Like, we're not worried about it. You'll have time. Like, that felt good for me and knowing what the process was going to look like. So definitely don't wait until your first day to be surprised by what their process looks like. Definitely ask about it.
Yeah, I got a nasty surprise my first day, or the first week, where I finally got my database hooked up and displaying, and I saw this drop down just like keep scrolling, and there's like 150 tables listed in this same database, and I was like, what? Shouldn't there be a limit? I don't know. And yeah, ditto. There were like 6 different microservices that we use, separate repos for like front end, back end. And one of the first things my boss had me do, he's very into like, oh, here's a challenge for you. And he's like, okay, so find the state machine and tell me how it works. It's like, okay, well, that sounds back end, right? So I was looking for like a day and a half in the back end, and it lives in the front end, and I was just total waste. And I didn't understand anything I was looking at. It felt like, you see it, you're like, okay, that's a class, that's an object, that's a variable. Okay, I get, all these words separately make plenty of sense. But I would say like I was super overwhelmed and afraid. And on like day 3 of that task, I had one coworker down in Costa Rica ask, how everything was going. And I was like, God, do you know anything about the state machine? And she's like, oh, nobody does. Just ask Danny. I was like, what? Like, it was just a complete, like, Danny wrote it and made it and tested it, and it works great. And he's the only one who knows how it works. And so it's like a trick. So I guess all that to say, like, just ask sooner rather than later. Your coworkers are probably going to be like, oh yeah, everybody hates that, or like that's so tricky, or it's, it took me a week to get that, those kinds of things. So it's just getting over that initial like, shouldn't I know where it is, like imposter syndrome type thing. Like, man, how did I get here if I can't even find something that is being referred to by a name that appears nowhere in the code. Yeah. So it's challenging, I would say. Not always. I mean, I'm sure there's places not like that, but just ask earlier rather than later. And your coworkers should be on your side for sure.
I guess in the same vein, I also want to say really great advice, everybody. But in the same vein, I wanted to say, like, you could be like the best, most genius engineer ever, but no matter whatever new role you're going into, it's always going to take time to learn the code base. Well, unless like was said earlier, unless you're like at a startup and you're creating everything, But most times when you are joining a company, there's already like a legacy code, there's stuff that was built by other people. And so your job is going to be learning the workflow, where documentation lies, how things work and what things mean, So no matter what, even if you're the best at your craft, like every company does things a little differently, So I think this is also touches back to, being okay with not knowing everything, Like when you get hired, they are expecting to teach you. They are expecting to invest in you, like you're not going to be absolutely perfect and godlike right away, they are expecting you to ask questions to understand things better, so definitely don't be afraid to do that and reach out to people and see what the best way it is to learn your code base.
I'm going to add on one more thing because I think you made like a beautiful point. Think about any other job you ever had in your whole life. You didn't show up on the first day and they were like, okay, go do it. They're going to teach you how to do the job. Like you're not expected to know it all. And it would be shocking if you did. So I know it can seem super overwhelming to be like, what is this giant thing in front of me? But it will come with time. And if they have a good process and you work with good people who like communicating and you like communicating and you love asking questions and learning, you'll be fine.
I actually have another question. So talking about the internship, I've always felt like, because now we're talking about onboarding. So it makes me think like, is 1 month enough for onboarding? Like, do they expect you to be at like a faster pace, or is it still like, they still give you that time to learn the flow, or because it's 1 month, or do they expect like you to go at a faster pace?
I guess I could speak about my internship experience since it's like the most recent. It occurred from like November to like January. So it sounds like a huge gap, but there's like also like the holiday break from like December. So it was only like 5 weeks. But I think it really does depend on your the internship that you're paired with. But I was at Visor, which is a startup in San Diego, and I think they did an excellent job of, I guess, helping us acclimate to the code base. So honestly were really hands off because we had 4 interns total. So I guess we kind of like relied on each other a lot to kind of figure things out. But we ended up we first started our tasks by making spec tests for the databases. And at first we were like, all of us cumulatively had no idea what was going on. We had no idea why things were named some things. Some legacy was really bad where like some things were just like not named semantically. It was really, really crazy. But I think a good lesson in that is learning to work well with your internship partners. Sometimes you'll intern by yourself, but if you're with people, definitely use each other as tools to kind of figure things out together. And by us writing the spec tests, just tests for the database, it really helped us understand the app so much more. There are like so many relationships to the app, but us writing tests and seeing how these things are supposed to work really helped us understand a lot. And we ended up doing spec tests maybe like a week and a half. And I think that was enough to really understand a lot of the code base. So I think it was good pacing there.
I have inside knowledge because before I was working at Circle CI, I was an instructor at Learn. So I've been a student and an instructor and then beyond. So as a student, like I totally feel that same kind of apprehension where you're like, how am I going to learn it in a month? Like, how am I going to accomplish anything in a month? And I would like to say that Learn does a really good job at pairing people with a company that's going to be good for them and vice versa. Like they are going to mesh well. I have been on the other side of the process of like companies interviewing with the students and then us discussing it, because the instructors, as instructors, we know the students so well. Like, we know how you work, we know who you work well with, we know how you are under pressure, we know where your skills lie, and we have a big part in choosing kind of where people go and what's going to be appropriate. So if, you know, you're a person at the end of the 3 months where you're like, okay, I really want to have more time with XYZ in my internship so that I feel really confident, we can take that information and apply that to the choices that are kind of helping you get matched properly. That sounds, yes, it's like Learn Tinder, basically. It's job Tinder. And we are the algorithm. Well, we were, I am not, Sarah is, but if that's something that you're worried about, like, that's something that you can tell your instructors, like, hey, I want to make sure I have more time with this. And they will definitely take that into consideration when matching you. Because the companies that Learn sends you with, like, they understand the expectations. Like, they know what level you're at technically. They know what sort of projects that they should assign to you. They're not gonna, well, they shouldn't just throw you into the deep end. Like, they've been vetted, they've been onboarded, they've had expectations set for them before they even met any of you guys. So trust that we have really great companies that, I keep saying like in the present tense, but Learn has really great companies that they pair with. So I wouldn't worry too much, but yeah.
Rachel's in the back in Zoom and feeling the Learn vibes.
I kind of had a unique experience at my internship. Well, maybe not, but I didn't have an existing project that I was working on. They had me they had me make a Slack bot. So that entailed like spinning up a Node.js server, which was definitely different for me, but it had the benefit of being like a blank slate that I could just work with, and the Slack documentation is really good. So I was fortunate in that sense. So I can't speak to that as much in terms of onboarding, but I didn't know like Node.js pretty much at all, just very vaguely from like the NPM processes. So it was a little bit different, but it was a good project.
For me, my internship was with a company, Zito in San Diego, that at the time did mob programming, pair programming, something like that. So in the data team, we had 3 people, including me. And if you're familiar with the concept, they basically just had me sit at the keyboard and type what they wanted me to do. That's what I got paid to do that for 3 months. So it's not too bad, but it was actually a really good learning experience, because for my colleagues, they actually said why they were doing what they wanted me to type. So, you know, we're gonna type out this, and you know, there's different ways you can do X, Y, and Z, but we're going to go with Y because it is more efficient than X or something like that. And I want to say it really accelerated my learning experience. And it's exhausting. It is exhausting listening to people nonstop. I'm an introvert, so that was just like, by the end of the day, I was exhausted. I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I have a roommate. I'm going to acknowledge that he's not there. I just don't want to talk. Like, it was so exhausting, but I learned so much. And I definitely agree that, you know, the companies are set at the correct expectation in terms of, you know, the skill set that you have. Learn does an amazing job talking to them, setting the correct expectations and whatnot. And some companies have different onboarding internship experiences than other. This is also something that you can try to filter out yourself when you know, look at these companies and figure out, what kind of internship program are they expecting to have? Is it, pair programming? I know some companies do it online. So that may be a possibility, during this pandemic. If that's something that you would like to do, as a learning experience instead of tackling a project by yourself, see if any of the companies with internships have that as an offer or as an option. So it's definitely a different learning internship experience. But I really enjoyed it a lot.
That's funny. I think from all of your answers, like what you did in your internship was very different, but you all felt like it was a good internship. And, so it's like no one internship is going to look the same, even if you're working for the same company. And so, but we do try to put a lot of thought into not only like who from Learn you're working with, but what company you're working with and why. And yeah, so thanks everybody. Any final questions?
I had one more. So I know, like sometimes you'll get an internship, you'll actually be faced with like a language you probably haven't even learned while you were in those 3 months. Like, how does that go? Like, I know you're probably freaking out, I'm sure, but like, how does that go when you see a language that you've never seen? Do you have time to learn it? Like, are you able? I'm thinking you're able to be honest that you don't know. Is like, can I have time to learn it first and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think somebody mentioned this earlier, but once you learn a language and you understand the concepts for it, it's really those skill sets, that knowledge is very transferable to another language. And I actually try to keep my resume language agnostic. Like, with the skill set, I'll say, I know Python, SQL, blah, blah, blah. But the rest of the resume, very language agnostic, because I find it pretty easy to pick up another language once you're comfortable with one. So it's definitely not something I would be worried about. My internship was in Python, and I went to bootcamp for JavaScript. So it's definitely happened during my internship. I don't think that's the case for most internships, though. They're pretty closely related to JavaScript. I'm not really sure anymore, but I wouldn't stress out about it. At the end of the day, it's pretty common. It's like, the written or the verbal language, like every language has nouns, verbs, etc. Right? So it's the same thing with programming: classes, objects, functions, variables. And yeah, it's definitely not something I would stress out about.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what we were talking about before, where the companies like they know learn stack, so they know kind of what they're getting when they bring on interns, and so they're familiar with the fact that maybe they're working with a language that we haven't taught. I say Learn hasn't taught yet. So yeah, they'll definitely give you time to get onboarded properly to feel comfortable working with whatever projects or anything that they're having you do in those 4 weeks.
Yeah, I would add on that even, right, the internships are well set up and structured for that, and those guys have spoken to that really well, that they're not going to put you in a bad position where you have no chance of accomplishing what you need to in the time. But even like showing up to a job that isn't set up through Learn or anything like that, where you've gone through the interviews, they know what you know, and that's what they're gonna expect. And it takes time. It takes time for everyone. Like it was said before, like nobody is gonna be able to go from, oh, I know like JavaScript and PHP and then pick up like C++ overnight. There's just no way. And you wouldn't be very good at it, even if you did start writing some code the next day. So I think if they're not giving you that time that you need when all the expectations and assumptions are on the table, then you don't want to be there. That's what I would say.
And then, sorry, Rachel, were you gonna say something else?
I was just gonna say, and if you ever were in that situation, that's just when you reach out to the career services manager at Learn and we sort it out. They sort it out.
And then I'm not sure if anybody's mentioned it, but a part of the Learn curriculum is also having the tech talk. So like you're given like, I forgot how long it is, like a week, to kind of study and present like a small technical talk to your cohort and the cohort that's starting after you. Some people do a talk on something that's not related to the internship at all, but I think it's a good opportunity as well, since you're going into your internship right after that. It's a good opportunity to take the time to learn the tech stack or study what you need for the libraries or languages you need for your internship.
Yeah, and when you spend 3 months really focusing on how to learn something, learning one more thing is not as big of a deal as it seems at the beginning. Our whole curriculum is focused on like, how do you pick up these new concepts? I think CJ, you mentioned it. It's like focusing on what your learning style is. How do you adapt the information that you're receiving, 8 hours a day to your learning style, and you become really, really good at learning. Like our name is kind of the point. I mean, that's really what we teach. It's much less that we're concerned about like, oh, you need to know this language, as like you need to understand how you learn how to program and how do you learn how to think through these problems and exercise critical thinking skills. And so when you've become well versed at that, the next thing is just the next thing. All right. Well, we really appreciate all of you joining us. Thank you very, very much to our lovely panelists. It was so good to see all of you and share our virtual space. And if you have any questions, maybe they can drop some contact information in our chat. And perfect, can reach out and bug them for more of their little bits of wisdom.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. So let's share some love for the panelists in the chat and on Zoom. So really appreciate it. And thank you. So this is we have another event next week for anyone who is interested in learning just a bit more about what the virtual classroom even looks like. So Sarah or perhaps Mina will be leading us through, kind of a virtual open house, and that's the same time, 5:30 next Wednesday. So we hope to see some of you there, but otherwise, thank you so much for your time and your good questions, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you so much.